Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Again, I normally start these videos as if you've watched kind of almost an episodic series here and you've been involved with the channel for a while. But if you're new to the channel, please take a look at some of the previous videos to kind of catch up. I'm doing today a follow-up of my video I started this past weekend with a gentleman who I visited who's a hardcore audiophile, one of the most hardcore I've ever met. And in terms of gear under one roof, just amazing. And so I'm doing individual videos now of each of his systems. I did the Tidal Sunrays and the ASR gear last video. Today I'm going to do his home theater, which includes the JM Labs Grand Utopias and the matching center channel and rear channels. And as well, they aren't in the video because it wasn't set up, was Meridian Gear and Mark Levinson electronics for that home theater. Now, there's a couple of reasons why we didn't film. Number one, he was getting the electronics I think either worked on or upgraded. But also, his house is huge, as you've seen in that prior video. But he has a big family, and then his house is a good destination on weekends for his kids to have people over. So I think they were even using that home theater as a bedroom that weekend. So I kind of explained to somebody, it was almost being like at this gentleman's house was being at Expona with the amazing gear and also a spring break resort with his kids having friends over. It's a fun place, great family guy. And like I said, it's not just him who's a hardcore audiophile. You could say his whole family is, because his wife lets him have all that gear. And that's a large part of every room in terms of aesthetics. And then his kids have systems too, which I'm not even featuring. So again, pretty much, I didn't clickbait you guys when I said this guy's hardcore. Anyway, today I'm going to show that home theater. We don't have music clips. I'm going to put music clips in a second video anyway for any of these systems where I did do video clips, audio clips, because YouTube is just going crazy. Sometimes they'll send me an email out of a video I released a year ago, say, we're now blocking this video. It's bad enough they don't give you any revenue if you put a song in there that's copyrighted. Now, sometimes I guess the arrangement changes and they'll block an entire video that I had. So I have to put audio stuff in its own video separately. So part B, I'll release it today of this with the Aries Cerat speaker. He's got Aries Cerat gear in almost all of his systems, but the one I'm going to feature today is the one that features the Aries Cerat Aurora speaker. And I'll talk about the electronics of Aries Cerat in other videos, and I have that interview with Stavros, the CEO and designer of Aries Cerat, who will go into a lot more detail as well. But today you'll see Aries Cerat mated with WAVAC amplification, which is amazing looking stuff. But I wanted to mainly focus on letting you guys know a little bit more of what I learned on the Aries Cerat speaker, that Aurora speaker that was very polarizing and it's revolutionary in many ways now that I've learned more about it. So I want to share with you from a layperson's example, explanation, I guess. Stavros is going to give a lot more details in the interview, but let me just share with you as just kind of a regular audiophile how I understand they're doing some things very innovative, at least, with this speaker. So number one, the horn configuration and just how it's carved out and it mates to a square cabinet is something that you rarely see and is not as easy as it looks to do. It requires great engineering, formulas and all that to do it right, and also to take away some of the negatives of horn configuration and how it's designed. That's something that Aries Cerat pays a lot of attention to, and on top of that, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but they have this 5-axis CNC machine and a lot of other tools that you're going to hear about in this interview that aren't even unique to audiophile companies. I mean, no other audiophile company has that I'm aware of has some of these things, but it's also one of the few in all of Europe that they have some of these tools. So it allows them to create a horn design and mating to a box that a lot of other speaker companies can't even do, and that's why this was so unique when I saw it. Some companies just can't even do it, even if they thought about it. Now, that's not where it ends, though, the horn on its own, and the aesthetics, which you're going to see the most beautiful paint job. That's even proprietary for Aries Cerat. Nobody else can do that. But the other things about it, the bass configuration is arguably the most brilliant thing about it and one of the strengths of many of that speaker. And let me explain to you how it is. You'll see it in the video, but there's a bass driver on each of the planes of the box, the cube cabinet structure, but open baffle in the back. But it's not an open baffle sub, at least in the traditional sense. An open baffle sub has the driver mounted, opposite of the open baffle, and then the negative that I've brought up in many cases that people don't like is it doesn't create that back wave and acoustic pressure that you like from at least those super low frequencies. And so in this case, the brilliance is that he's got that open baffle element to take away some of that cabinet resonance and issues with a closed cabinet, but he's also got them mounted opposite each other in this cube such that they get the back wave in a dipole-ish configuration. And here's where it's really an extra level of benefit. It loads the room in different angles such that it mitigates some of the room modes and stuff that you would have with just one firing driver. And so it gives you almost a quasi swarm method that I've mentioned before, spreading out subs around. This is kind of doing it, but all in one package. And then the most brilliant thing of all of this is that he's got it time aligned, because those configurations of the woofers are all about meet at the middle, which is also the time alignment for the horn driver, where that starts. So that's just, brilliant. And then very few speaker companies have done that, or even think of doing it, or could do that. And it doesn't stop there. The tweeter is a raw ribbon tweeter, which, as many people know in the hobby, that's one of the best in the world. I've talked to some people, they would argue maybe the plasma tweeters are a little better, but you're talking about state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line tweeters. And what he does is really unique. He does it in a dipole configuration, but he horn loads the front with those little curvatures, and it doesn't stop there with the uniqueness. He angles it. And so if you're familiar with how these ribbon tweeters work, they have a different horizontal dispersion than vertical, much less floor-to-ceiling dispersion than they do on the horizontal axis. And so what you normally see, and that's common with a lot of speakers, and that's why it's important with some of these speakers to have sidewall reflection points treated. But still, you're hearing, oftentimes from your listening position, a reflection from the right speaker hitting the left wall, and vice versa. And sometimes it makes a more nebulous center image, and maybe the mouths are wider, and it's not a true center image, among other problems too. Well, what he does is brilliant. He takes that negative of a ribbon dispersion and turns it into a positive. He puts it on an angle. Now some of those sidewall reflections actually hit the ceiling. And so you don't get as much reflection off the sidewall and then hitting your other ear. It's similar. I hate to do this comparison, but anybody that's heard the Polk L800 SD8 technology, they do it totally different. They try to eliminate interaural crosstalk with out-of-phase information hitting the sidewalls. Totally different design. But both are trying to get a more true stereo image where you're hearing less of the other speaker or the other speaker's reflection in the opposite ear. And so it's very reminiscent in some ways of hearing a Polk SDA for the first time. When you hear this set up properly, like I did at this gentleman's house, really wide sound stage. And like I said, only the Polk SDA has given me that kind of, wow, this is a magnanimous soundstage. The other thing that does take a little bit while to get used to, and I didn't really notice it at the show, but I noticed at this gentleman's house, the center image now becomes much more confined and focused, such that you almost think it's wrong. You almost think the person's in a hallway singing, but it's because you're not getting as many nebulous reflections on each side like you do with a normal speaker, such that it tends to fill in that center area with more nebulous blob. It's just something you're going to have to hear for yourself, and who knows, you may not like that, but the more I thought about what I was listening to, the more I thought, it's different, and I thought maybe it's not right. Now, the more I think about it, it actually is more right and more focused. But it's something you want to audition and kind of see for yourself. It's pretty incredible, the wide soundstage, and how you can also adjust that tweeter as well to kind of take one, tune it to your taste. On top of that, let's talk about the crossover. I mean, this crossover is state of the art. Not only does he power the subwoofers with Class D amplification, that's kind of standard, but he has a Bluetooth app that you get with this speaker, but it's not for DSP. He's doing it with analog relays to adjust the crossover. And again, he'll talk about this more in the interview I did with him, but it's all about helping that speaker mate to different size rooms where you might want to change the crossover and some of the parameters he gives. And he talks about how they do it themselves when they're in a small room versus this size room versus that size room, how this manipulation of the crossover and customization can really pay dividends. So he's not using DSP, and was kind of against DSP for, I guess, the same thing a lot of people purists like to say, whatever reason. But in my mind, it's the same forest through the trees argument. Let's get the ability to modify your speaker for your environment such that at the end of the day, the pluses are better than any trade-offs. And he's just doing it with analog relays. And certainly if I had a speaker, or if everybody gave you that option, then yeah, I wouldn't need DSP and a mini DSP. But to do it the way he's doing it is extremely expensive, a lot of effort. And so you certainly, if you can afford that and you have speakers that give you that option, this is something that is truly revolutionary and state of the art in terms of what I've seen, even at cost no object budgets. So I just want to give you that little preface. I will follow up with music clips, and then more on the electronic side of Aries Cerat will be in future videos as well as that interview. So enjoy.
Okay guys, this is the home theater. Kind of give you a really cool. He has lots of kids that have lots of friends that obviously it's more cool to hang out at this house than anywhere else. These are JM Labs Grand Utopias. JM Labs was the predecessor to Futile, for those that don't know. Grand Utopia. Still state of the art. I think the electronics are out. These are Velodyne DD. I have them written down here. DD18, so 18-inch woofers. Got the matching center. Normally the electronics is going to be Levinson and Meridian. So I think some of it's out right now, getting worked on. But yeah, amazing. So you can come in here, play Call of Duty with Grand Utopias and surround sound with 18-inch subs. Yeah, who wouldn't want to be a kid in here? But there's more to come. Let me show you the rest. Okay, ever wanted to compare a REL 25 to the G1s? This is a stack of REL subs that consists of the REL 25 on the bottom and the G1s. So it just shows you just how massive that REL 25 is. And I'm going to show you in another system, he has the stack of carbon specials. But before I even show you the front, you guys might recognize this from the rear. This is the Aries Cerat Unique Aurora speaker featured at Expona. 4 massive drivers, bass drivers, and then this compression driver. It's a 3-way horn, unique to say the least. It's got a dipole ribbon, and this can be adjusted to aim directly, and you probably want it directly on axis with you, but it's time aligned and active crossover, and there is actually an app where you can further control the crossover. And that's one thing I've learned a lot more about Aries Cerat this weekend, in the adjustability factor of their equipment is pretty much unmatched. Every piece has ways to control the bias to the tubes and some other stuff, and I hope to have an interview soon with the designer to give more details, because I don't want to speak out of turn. This is very complex gear, very sophisticated, and stuff that you don't see almost nobody else does. I want to show you this liquid copper finish. You probably didn't get a good appreciation for it at Expona, but this is beautiful. Now, I know people have said what this looks like, and that can be polarizing, but when you get it in this kind of finish and get up close, you realize it takes on much more of an artistic flavor. And actually, they make a liquid carbon. You can probably pick this up on camera. This is an amazing look, but you got to be up close and see it. Yeah, just to do this type of finish is nothing short of extraordinary. I actually have all this stuff written down, so let me go through. It's the Aries Cerat Cassandra reference 2, the Impera reference 2, revised. We've got the Wavac 833 reference monos. These are beautiful. And actually they put out considerable amount of power. Gorgeous. So you can mix and match Aries Cerat. You know, staying within their ecosystem is probably the easiest way, but here you're showing that it can mix and match. In acoustic cabling. And everything's being streamed by a dual Pink Fawn server. One's doing the rendering, one's being the server, and that's in another room. But it gives you a chance to see. Beautiful. In its own right. Obviously, people are going to have opinions about that speaker, but sounds wonderful. Very unique presentation, very engulfing, especially when you pair it with 6 rel subs. You're talking about dynamics on par with MBL Extreme level. It's got the compression driver that handles most of the frequency range, and then basically the ribbons and those bass drivers. Again, 4 bass drivers plus 6 subs, and these are perfectly mated so that it's not too much and these subs don't call attention to themselves, which is very hard to do often with these rel stacks. So very impressive. On to the next room.